Good morning, everybody. This is Denise Tawwab. I'm back again to talk some more about the Risk Management Framework. And in this video, I want to cover the two tasks that are in the implement step of the NIST Risk Management Framework. We're going to talk about the purpose of the implementation step, and then we'll look at the two tasks that make up that step. On your screen is a graphic of the 7 steps in the NIST Risk Management Framework, Revision 2. And this is all based on NIST Special Publication 837, Rev 2, where they added the Prepare task, the Categorize task, the Select task, then there's the Implement, which is the task that we're on now. There's an Assess step, not task step, the Authorize step, and the Monitor step. And these tasks are not iterative. I mean, they start out, when you first start out, you kind of do them in order. But beyond that, each step informs the other. And so it's not linear. It's a very iterative process that happens when you're implementing the NIST Risk Management Framework. The purpose of the implement step of the NIST Risk Management Framework is to implement the controls in the security and privacy plans that you created for the system and for the organization, and to document in a baseline configuration the specific details of the control implementation. So in your select step, you identify the controls that you were going to use to secure the system. You tailor those controls based on the specifics of your environment and your system. And then you documented that information in a system security plan. In this step, you're going to implement those documented controls, and you're going to update your document if necessary. So let's keep going. The first step in the implement, the first task in the implement step is control implementation. And I laugh when I look at this list because it says control implementation. But what I will tell you is this is where the meat of what most people think of as information security happens. This is the technical stuff. This is where people are securing the network, securing data, doing access control, implementing all the controls from the 18 control families. It's all happening in this step that we just call control implementation. In this task, you implement the controls that are in your security and privacy plans. And this can happen for new systems at the development, acquisition, implementation, assessment phases. And for existing systems, this will happen in the operations and maintenance phase of the system development life cycle. The inputs to control implementation include your security and privacy plans that you created in the select step and had approved by the authorizing official, system design documents, your security and privacy policies and procedures, business impact or criticality analyses, enterprise architecture information, security and privacy architecture information, a list of the security and privacy requirements that have been allocated to the system, to system elements, and to the environment of operation. You need system element information, system component inventory, and your risk assessment results, both for the organization and for the system. The expected output from this task is implemented controls. Okay, who's responsible for control implementation? The primary responsibility belongs to the system owner and to the common control provider for any common controls that are provided to the system. Supporting roles can be played by your information owner, your security and privacy architects, your system security engineer, privacy engineer, your system security officer, your system privacy officer, the enterprise architect, and of course the system administrator. Again, who does what depends on how your organization is set up. In a large organization, the work might be spread out. In a very, very small company, it can just be a few people doing it. So the roles and the names of those roles might change, but again, for all steps in the risk management framework, the tasks themselves have to be done. All right, here's some things to think about when you're doing control implementation. Organizations will implement the controls as described in the security and privacy plans. The control implementation is consistent with the enterprise architecture and the associated security and privacy architectures. So you're going to fit into the structure that's been established. Organizations use best practices when implementing controls, including system security and privacy engineering methodologies, concepts, and principles. And system security engineering is covered in this special publication 800-160, I believe. Risk assessments, both at the system and at the organization level, will guide and inform the decisions that you make when you're securing the system regarding the cost, the benefit, and the risk trade-offs in using different technologies or policies for control implementation. Again, the focus of the risk management framework is to, of course, to protect all assets, but in a situation where budgets are limited and you have to make priorities and trade-offs, you have to establish priorities and make trade-offs, you want to be sure that you secure your critical data and your high-value systems. And so that's what happens in the control implementation step. You want to ensure that mandatory configuration settings are established and implemented on system elements in keeping with your organization's policy, or if you're a federal agency, then with federal policies as well. When organizations have no direct control over what controls are implemented in a system element, for example, commercial off-the-shelf products, commercial off-the-shelf software, etc., you want to consider the use of system elements that have been tested, evaluated, or validated by approved independent third-party assessment facilities. For example, if you're implementing cryptography, then you want to make sure that it has been approved, whatever product you choose, with the NIST Cryptographic Module Validation Program testing labs, or by the Common Criteria testing labs for other products. You want to make sure that somebody else has looked at that and said, okay, this product is essentially safe to use. And I hesitate to say that, but for lack of a better word, we'll just leave it there. The test evaluations and validations consider products in specific configurations and in isolation. Your control implementation addresses how the product is integrated into the system while preserving security functionality and assurance. All right, you're going to address assurance requirements when implementing the controls. Assurance requirements are directed at the activities that control developers and implementers carry out to increase the level of confidence that the controls are implemented correctly, operating as intended, and producing the desired outcome with respect to meeting the security and privacy requirements for the system. The assurance requirements will address quality of the design, development, and implementation of the control. System security and privacy engineers work with each other with the common control provider to determine the most appropriate way to implement the common controls that have been inherited by the system. System owners can refer to the authorization packages prepared by common control providers when determining the adequacy of the common controls inherited by their system. If the common controls that are available for inheritance fail to meet the specified security or privacy requirements for the system, or when the common controls have unacceptable deficiencies, then the system owners will identify compensating or supplementary controls to be implemented. System owners can supplement the common controls with system-specific or hybrid controls to achieve the required protection for their systems, or they can accept greater risk with the acknowledgement and approval of the organization. So basically, they have to go back to the authorizing official and say, the common control is deficient, but we can, rather than try to supplement it or do anything, let's just accept the greater risk that comes from using the control. And that has to be signed off on by the authorizing official. Your risk assessments may determine how gaps in security and privacy requirements between systems and common controls affect the risk associated with the system, and how to prioritize the need for compensating or supplementary controls to mitigate specific risks. In control implementation, your organization will conduct initial control assessments during system development and implementation. Conducting these assessments in parallel with the development and implementation phases of the SDLC facilitates early identification of any deficiencies, and provides a cost-effective method for initiating corrective actions. Issues that are discovered during these early assessments can be referred to the authorizing officials for resolution. The results of the initial control assessments can also be used during the authorized step to avoid delays or costly repetition of assessments. So those early assessments that you perform during the development and implementation phases of a system, you can use those assessments, you can reuse those assessments during the authorized step of the risk management framework to avoid repeating work and incurring more costs. Assessment results that are reused in other phases of the SDLC meet the reuse requirements established by the organization. And we'll talk more about this in the assess step. Okay, that's task one in the implement step. The next task is to information. Okay, in the update control implementation information, say that real fast, task, you document changes to planned control implementations based on the as implemented state of controls. And what I mean by that is you can plan a plan, but when you go to implement the controls, something about the system, something about the environment, something about the network, something about a system component might dictate that you implement that control in a way that is different from what was documented in the initial system security or privacy plan. So in task I2, you update the control implementation information to reflect the as implemented state of the controls. The inputs to this task are, of course, your security and privacy plans and information from control implementation efforts. What did you learn in the field when you tried to implement the controls? The expected output is going to be security and privacy plans that have been updated with implementation detail sufficient for use by assessors, and also a system configuration baseline. The primary responsibility for updating control implementation information, making sure those security and privacy plans are accurate, that responsibility falls to the system owner and also to the common control provider. Supporting roles, again, can be provided by the information owner or steward, security and privacy architects, system security engineers, privacy engineers, security and privacy officers, the enterprise architect, and of course the system administrator. All right, things to consider when you're updating control implementation information. Despite the details in the initial security and privacy plans and the system design document, it is not always feasible to implement controls as planned. Therefore, as control implementations are carried out, the security and privacy plans are updated with as implemented control implementation details. The updates include revised descriptions of the implemented controls, including changes to planned inputs, expected behavior, and expected outputs, with sufficient details to support security and privacy control assessments. Documenting the as implemented control information is essential to providing the capability to determine when there are changes to the controls, whether those changes are authorized, and the impact of the changes on the security and privacy posture of the system and on the organization. So that is the implement step, and those are the two tasks that have to be performed during the implement step. This step can take a very, very long time to complete, and that's the end of this particular video. In the next video, I'll talk about the next step in the risk management framework, which is the assess step. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope this added value. Please like, subscribe, leave comments, leave criticism, just talk to me, and I will read your comments and respond. So thanks again, and have a great day.